Chapter 21. Lawsuits, Threat of Bankruptcy. Lawsuits are rare and catastrophic experiences for the vast majority of men. And even when the catastrophe ensues, the controversy relates most often not to the law, but to the facts. In countless litigation, the law is so clear that judges have no discretion. Benjamin N. Cardozo. Tony Pizarro's venture into business was not without setbacks. In 2005, he discovered his business partner, Jose Marquez, with the connivance of the company's comptroller, Robert Gloria, not his real name, had embezzled $1.3 million from company funds. At the same time, he was building a mansion in the Philippines, among other things. Tony was not told about this. The two partners each owned 50% of the company, and both had check-signing privileges. They were the founders of their jointly owned company, with Marquez as the president and Tony the vice president. The company grew as the U.S. Navy and other military services moved toward subcontracting non-military services. At one time, it provided about 400 workers to do janitorial, food service, transportation, and other jobs on bases around the country. The company hired another U.S. Navy veteran, Robert Gloria, a retired chief warrant officer, as the company comptroller. Tony remembered the events that led to his discovery of the stolen funds. On February 22, 2005, his second eldest brother, Elpidio de Leon Pizarro, passed away. On February 26, 2005, while he was busy making the arrangements for his brother's funeral, Verna Lucra, the company's assistant controller, knowing that both president and vice president would close a buying and selling deal, contacted Tony and reported that Jose Marquez, the company president, was stealing funds. His official reason for signing the unauthorized checks was to pay the vendors, but the money was actually being deposited in his personal bank accounts. After asking Verna how much money Marquez could have stolen, Tony remembered. She replied, possibly above $500,000. That's when Tony stopped and said, "We will take him to court if he doesn't settle." The timing was critical because Tony had just drawn a contract to buy Marquez's share of the company for $500,000. It was supposed to be signed on March 1, 2005, which was just a few days away. Verna met Tony at a restaurant in National City that day, Friday, the 26th. The next day, the 27th, Saturday, he buried his brother. On the 28th, Sunday, Tony and Verna went to the office to investigate. They found the checks in question were indeed cashed by Marquez and not the vendors. On March 1, Monday, Tony went to the Union Bank and requested the bank manager to provide him with copies of the checks provided by Verna. It gave proof that the funds were indeed stolen and deposited in Marquez's bank account. On March 2, Tuesday, Marquez showed up at the office on or about 8 a.m. and wanted to talk to Tony. Tony met Marquez raging mad and shouted, "After all is what you did to me and the company, you're still here? Get out of here now. If you don't, I might wind up killing you." Tony's eyes were bloodshot, his body shaking. Jose Marquez left the office at once and never came back. Tony, a combat-trained veteran with a cautious and alert mind, changed all the door locks and computer passwords. He also added security guards at the gate and outside lightings in the premises. He also changed his driving routes each day as well as his working hours. On March 3, Wednesday, Marquez requested to meet with Tony's son Gerard, the lawyer of their company, to negotiate and settle the case. Marquez offered to return $100,000 in cash, which Tony rejected outright. On March 4, Thursday, Tony sought the help of Eugene Iredale Esquire, a Harvard Law School graduate, to be the lead lawyer as recommended by his daughter Wendy. Iredale gladly accepted. He took the case and teamed up with Gerard Pizarro Esquire in prosecuting Marquez and Gloria. On March 5, Friday, the case was filed at the San Diego Superior Civil Court. Charges were for misappropriation of company funds, embezzlement, and fraud. The case took 11 months before judge and jury. In the end, justice prevailed. Tony handily won the case against Marquez and Gloria. Tony Pizarro, then 65, said during an interview with the San Diego Union Tribune, a major daily newspaper in San Diego, California, that he learned a horrible lesson from the ordeal. Don't trust anyone. Tony was able to recover part of the stolen money in the U.S. together with his lawyer children Gerard and Wendy. He went to the Philippines and filed a lawsuit to enforce the judgment done in San Diego court in order to recover some of the loot taken to that country. Due to the slow-paced court system in the Philippines, the case dragged on for years. In May of 2008, the brothers of Marquez, who were all U.S. residents, went home to the Philippines. It turned out that Marquez had died of cancer, and the brothers returned to attend his funeral. The death coincided with the grand opening of the Pizarro Santos Gawad Kalinga village of 42 homes, which the family generously donated to the homeless villagers of his beloved town. Tony opted not to pursue the case in the Philippines, giving up the chance to recover part of the over $2 million awarded to him by the U.S. court. The Marquez case was not the only legal battle Tony encountered in his business. In 2004, the company won the Fleet Hospital contract at Naval Air Station in Alameda, California. Jose Marquez and Tony hired Gary Lopez to become their project manager, but not as a business partner. One may recall that Lopez was his first choice in 1990 for a business partner when he was putting up the company. Tony even looked for him, but when they met, he made it clear that he was not interested. Tony had known Lopez for years. He started as a young man and joined the U.S. Navy at Sangley Point, Cavite, Philippines. Tony considered him to be one of his many mentors in life. To advance his career, Lopez told him that he took classes while an enlisted man and was able to get his Bachelor of Arts degree. Then he applied for the officers program and got selected to become a supply officer. In fact, Tony went to the Philippines, where Lopez had settled with his new and younger wife, to convince him to join him in the venture. He was even recruited by Tony, then a director of a food service subcontracting company, to manage its project operations in Hawaii. It was prior to Tony's founding of his own company. Lopez gladly accepted the latest offer and relocated himself to Alameda, Tony remembered. As a retired commander of the U.S. Navy and as a supply officer, Lopez always carried a title and privilege wherever he went. He always thought he was still the officer in charge of the whole operation and forgot he works as a civilian contractor for the Navy, Tony continued. The fact that the owner of the company was lower in rank than what he had achieved in the Navy may have led him to think he could have his way in the firm. It eventually became an issue the partners were forced to address. As the months progressed, the owners received a letter of caution from some clients threatening to terminate their contract with the firm due to the poor performance of the new project manager, meaning Lopez, if no immediate action was taken. The company immediately ordered Lopez to return to San Diego and reassigned him to become the director of project operations in 10 other logistics contracts. However, he continued to be hard on other project managers who complained to the owners. After having been given constant reminders to tone down his actions towards the project managers, as well as subjected to disciplinary warnings in the form of 3 reprimand letters, Lopez was terminated. By then he had become too heavy a load to carry due to his demonstrably bad actions that became a liability for the company. He was given severance pay, a whole year of vacation pay, and other benefits. But it was not the last they would see of the commander. 6 months later, Lopez sued the company with a dozen allegations like fraud, breach of promise, old age discrimination, among other things. Lopez came to the trial armed with some of the best lawyers in San Diego, one of whom ended up as judge of the Superior Court. We were worried about this case as it was not a slam dunk, Tony recalled. It was a matter of whom to believe, as there is no hard evidence to present. Tony, his lawyer Jim Rogers, and his son Gerard feared the jury might side with Lopez because he came out as strong and dignified, a respected and honorable commander in the U.S. Navy. On the other hand, Tony was small and ordinary-looking. There was so much at stake at the trial, recalled Tony. If I lose, I would lose everything. All the things I worked hard for over the years would be gone. I would be the poorest guy in San Diego. Lopez brought so many allegations that each would carry substantial financial punishments enough to wipe out Tony's assets. Although the trial has long been over, I would not mind dragging his name again because there was so much at stake. He brought my dad to the brink of bankruptcy, said Tony's son Gerard, who served as the secondary lawyer. Because of Lopez's physical stature, Tony's team thought that there was no way they could win in a jury trial. The members of the jury would love him and side with him. Before the hearing, Gerard stayed at his office for 48 hours, thinking of legal strategies to win the case. He sat in the dark behind his desk, with just a lamp illuminating that side of the office. He was flipping over the pages of the municipal code, looking for nothing in particular. Suddenly, he saw a section of the code that said the defense could request a mini-trial before the case would be brought to the jury if necessary. He called Jim Rogers, Esquad, the lead lawyer, in the wee hours of the morning, and told him what he discovered. Both of them got excited and agreed it might just be a winning strategy. As it turned out, the judge assigned to the case did not empanel a jury and tried the case himself. One critical part of the trial was when the prosecuting lawyer claimed the complainant and the defendant were close friends, pointing out to the judge that Tony even allegedly stood as a sponsor during the wedding of Lopez's daughter. Tony, however, did not remember playing that role and denied it when he was in the witness chair. To prove their point, Lopez's daughter arrived later on with a wedding photo showing Tony wearing a tuxedo and standing side by side with the bride and groom and the under-sponsors. Since it seemed Tony committed perjury by denying he was a sponsor, his lawyer asked for a recess to be able to examine the new piece of evidence presented to the court. They were huddled together, Tony, his lead lawyer Jim Rogers, and Gerard, when Wendy, his daughter who was then a Harvard University School of Law student, called their attention. At first, Tony did not want to be bothered and brushed aside Wendy a few times and told her to shut up. When she persisted, Tony told everyone to listen to what she had to say. She asked everyone to look and examine the wedding invitation. "Look, Dad, you are right," Wendy pointed out with excitement and joyfulness. "You were not a sponsor as your name is not listed nor printed as such in the wedding invitation. You were just a proxy for one of the sponsors, Mayor Roger Hedgecock of San Diego." The defense team successfully argued the case. Another reason why they won the case, according to Tony, was because the judge fully sympathized with him. He must have noted that Tony was an enlisted man who rose from a lowly steward to the rank of a chief warrant officer. He must have been impressed by it and deduced that the overbearing Lopez, who retired with the rank of commander and came across as haughty and superior in demeanor before the judge, indeed could not accept the fact his boss Tony was of inferior rank. Although they were now in the civilian world, the judge saw in plain view, from the demeanor Lopez had demonstrated in court that day, that the plaintiff could have easily disobeyed and disregarded his civilian superior's order simply because he was not about to let them forget he was once a commander. In the end, because Lopez could not produce irrefutable evidence of the charges he made against the company, all charges were dismissed by the judge. It was a Pyrrhic victory for Tony. After the trial was over, everyone went to the Hyatt Hotel to celebrate. Tony thanked everyone for their support and belief. A week has gone by, and Tony noticed that his son Gerard was gone, and nobody seemed to know where he was. When Tony finally asked his younger sister Wendy for his whereabouts, she told her father that Gerard had moved to the Bay Area with her to form their own law firm serving the San Francisco and Silicon Valley areas, and opening a practice in intellectual property litigation in the blossoming .com industry. Tony was dismayed, for he wanted Gerard to take over his business, the one he worked hard to be a success. But Gerard had other ideas. He wanted to test his wings to see if he could fly on his own. His son had become just like his father. "I felt like I lost an arm," Tony recalled. But Gerard on his own proved himself to be a savvy litigator.